My brother and his fiancée demanded $90,000 from my inheritance for their wedding, but when my whole family called me selfish, an accidental text exposed them all and destroyed their relationship. I'm 27 years old, work in digital marketing, and until about a year and a half ago, I thought I had a pretty normal family. You know, one of those families where everyone gets along, where dinners are loud but nice, where there's always someone celebrating something. My parents, Helen and Stephen, own a bakery in the town where we grew up, one of those traditional bakeries that smells amazing from the street and where everyone knows your name. My brother Nathan is 25, 2 years younger than me, and he was always like the golden boy of the family, the one who did everything right, the one who never screwed up, the one everyone adored. And I was the responsible older sister, the one who got good grades without making much noise, the one who went to college and got a decent job and never caused problems. I guess I should start with my grandfather, because without him, none of this would have happened. Or maybe it would have happened anyway, but in a different way. I don't know. My grandfather died 5 years ago, when I was 22 and barely finishing college. It was sudden, a heart attack in his sleep, one of those deaths that people say are the best because he didn't suffer, but that still leave you with a horrible emptiness because you didn't get time to say goodbye. I was very close to him. Much more than Nathan, honestly, because I spent every summer at his house when I was a kid, helping him in the garden and listening to his stories about when he was young and worked in construction. He was a simple man but very smart with money, one of those people who never seemed to have much but who saved every penny for decades. When he died, we discovered he had left a pretty specific will, and the part that went to me was a trust fund that I could only access when I turned 30, and that was specifically designated for things like a house, advanced education, or starting a business. Things like that. It wasn't a ridiculous fortune like millions of dollars, but it was a considerable amount. Enough to change your life if you used it well, like around $180,000, which for someone my age and in my situation was a lot of money. The thing is that my grandfather was very clear in the will. He put specific conditions on what the money could be used for and left instructions that it couldn't be touched before 30. I guess he wanted to make sure I was mature enough to handle it well. And honestly, I respect that, because at 22 I probably would have spent it on stupid things. Nathan received something too. But it was different. It was smaller and without as many restrictions. I think like $20,000 that he could use immediately. At that time, nobody made drama about it. My brother was fine with what he got. My parents said that Grandpa knew what he was doing, and I silently thanked, knowing that I would have that financial cushion waiting for me in the future. For years, literally years, nobody mentioned the trust fund. I continued with my life, got my job, moved to a decent apartment, started saving on my own, and Grandpa's money was like this thing that existed in the back of my mind but didn't affect my day-to-day because I still couldn't touch it. Everything changed about a year and a half ago when Nathan met Rebecca. Rebecca is 26, comes from a family with money, like quite a bit of money. Her dad owns a chain of car dealerships or something like that, and she grew up with all kinds of luxuries we never had. From the beginning, I thought she was a bit, I don't know, intense, but I thought maybe it was just my thing as an older sister, being overprotective. Nathan was completely in love, like head over heels, talked about her all the time, and my parents adored her because she was polite and always brought expensive wine to dinners and said the right things at the right times. They got engaged after like 8 months of dating, which seemed fast to me, but, well, it wasn't my life. And Rebecca started planning this super elaborate wedding, like magazine type, with super expensive venue and designer dress and all that show. The first time Rebecca mentioned my trust fund was at a family dinner, like 6 months after the engagement. We were all at my parents' house, eating lasagna that my mom had made, and out of nowhere, Rebecca says, "Hey Claire, your 30th birthday is next year, right? What are you going to do with the trust fund money?" And I was like, "Excuse me, what?" Because it wasn't something we normally discussed at the table, and I said something vague like, "Oh, well, I don't know. Probably save for a house or something." She smiled and said, "Oh, how exciting. You must feel very lucky." And I just nodded and tried to change the subject because I felt uncomfortable. You know, like when someone mentions your money in a way that doesn't feel quite right. Nathan didn't say anything at that moment, but I noticed he and Rebecca looked at each other in a strange way, like they had talked about this before. The following weeks, Rebecca started making more direct comments. Things like, "You know, Claire, When you have access to the money, you should consider investing it in something that benefits the whole family. Or how nice it would be if you could help Nathan with his future, now that we're getting married. I tried to be polite but firm, saying things like, yeah, well, I'll see what I do when the time comes. But she kept pushing. My parents started making comments too. Like, your grandfather would have wanted the family to support each other. Or, Nathan is your brother, Claire. You've always been close. And I thought, yes, we're close. But that doesn't mean I owe him my inheritance. You know what I mean? Then came the day everything really exploded. Rebecca and Nathan invited me to lunch. They said they wanted to talk about something important. And like an idiot, I thought maybe they were going to ask me to be a bridesmaid or something. We went to this nice Italian restaurant downtown, one of those with white tablecloths and candles, and after ordering, Rebecca goes straight to the point. She says, Claire, Nathan and I have been talking and we want to ask you something important. We need you to consider giving Nathan half of the trust fund as a wedding gift. I literally almost choked on the water. And I said something like, excuse me, what did you say? And she repeated it, very calmly, as if she was asking me to pass the salt. She explained that the wedding was going to cost like $80,000, that they wanted to buy a house afterward, that Grandpa's money was basically family money anyway, and that it would be unfair for me to keep it all for myself when Nathan was also Grandpa's grandson. Nathan was sitting there nodding, and that's what hurt me the most. Seeing my brother, who I grew up with, who I shared a room with for years, when we were kids, telling me that I basically owed him half of my inheritance. I tried to stay calm, explained that Grandpa had been very specific about the conditions of the trust fund, that I couldn't just give the money away like that I had plans to use it myself. Rebecca got all condescending, saying things like, I understand it's difficult to share, but this is what family does. And Nathan added that I had always been Grandpa's favorite anyway, that it was fair that I share. I got up from the table, threw like $20 for my part of the food that hadn't even arrived, and left. I cried all the way home, not from sadness, but from pure rage, that rage that boils inside you when you feel you're being treated unfairly, but can't do anything about it. After that lunch, things got ugly. Like really ugly. My parents called me for a family meeting, and when I arrived, they were all there. Nathan, Rebecca, my mom, my dad, and it was basically an intervention. They sat me down in the living room, the same living room where we used to watch movies on Friday nights when we were kids, and they told me I was being selfish. That family was more important than money. That Grandpa would have wanted me to help my brother. Rebecca was crying, like real tears running down her face, saying that I was ruining her wedding, that she never thought her future sister-in-law would be so cruel. My mom took my hands and said, Claire, my love, I know it's your money, but think about Nathan. Think about his future. And I could only think, why is nobody thinking about my future? Why am I suddenly the villain of the story? I tried to explain my position, said that Grandpa had been specific, that I also had plans, that it wasn't fair for them to ask me this. But it was like talking to a wall. My dad said we could reach a compromise, that maybe not half, but at least something. And when I said no, that I wasn't going to give anything because it wasn't fair, Nathan exploded. He yelled that I had always been the favorite, that Grandpa always loved me more, that I was a horrible sister, and Rebecca hugged him, crying harder. I left that house feeling like the worst person in the world, even though deep down I knew I wasn't doing anything wrong. But when your whole family tells you you're selfish, you start to doubt yourself, you know? The following weeks were a nightmare. Rebecca started contacting extended family, telling them her version of the story, saying that I refused to help my own brother on his special day, that Grandpa would be disappointed in me. Aunts I hadn't seen in years called me to tell me to reconsider. Cousins sent me messages saying I was breaking up the family. My cousin Michelle, who has always been like my best friend, was the only one who supported me. She called me and said, Claire, this is crazy. You don't owe them anything. Your grandfather left you that money for a reason. But it was one voice against a chorus of people telling me I was wrong. Then Rebecca took things to another level, a level that even today I can't believe she reached. She started investigating my finances. I don't know how, but she got information about my salary, my savings, my expenses. She told the family that I made good money and that I didn't need the trust fund as much as Nathan and her. But the worst was when she started contacting my workplace, or at least I think so, because my HR manager called me one day to ask me if everything was okay at home, that she had received an anonymous email expressing concern about my emotional stability. I could never prove it was Rebecca, but the timing was too convenient, right after I refused for the 10th time to give them money. By that point, I was exhausted, physically and emotionally drained from fighting this battle that shouldn't have existed in the first place. My parents had stopped inviting me to family dinners because my presence caused tension. Nathan wasn't talking to me at all, and Rebecca had blocked me from all social media but kept talking about me with whoever would listen. I started having anxiety attacks, doubting every decision I made, wondering if I really was being selfish like everyone said. But I was also angry, angrier than I had been in my life, because it was my money, my inheritance, my future, and somehow I had been turned into the villain for wanting to keep it. Finally, like 6 months after all this started, I decided to consult a lawyer. I spent like $500 on a long consultation where I explained the whole situation, showed him the terms of the trust fund, told him about Rebecca's harassment. The lawyer, an older man who reminded me a bit of my grandfather, ironically, told me that I was completely within my rights to keep the money, that the will was clear, and that Rebecca's behavior bordered on harassment. He suggested I document everything, every message, every call, every interaction, and that I consider sending a cease and desist letter if things didn't improve. I left that office feeling validated for the first time in months, like someone had finally told me I wasn't crazy, that I was right to defend what was mine. I started documenting everything religiously. I saved screenshots of text messages, recorded phone calls when it was legal, kept a log of every time someone pressured me. The lawyer prepared a formal letter addressed to Rebecca and Nathan, basically telling them to stop contacting me about the trust fund or face legal action. I never thought I would get to that point with my own family, but I had crossed a line I couldn't tolerate anymore. My parents got angry when they found out about the letter. My dad called me and said I was escalating things unnecessarily, that I was destroying the family over money. And I could only say that I wasn't the one who started this, that I wasn't the one who had turned a personal inheritance into a family circus. And then, like 3 weeks after sending the letter, something happened that changed everything completely. It was a Saturday morning. I was drinking coffee in my apartment, trying to enjoy one of the few moments of peace I had had in months, when my phone started, exploding with notifications. It was the family chat, the WhatsApp group where we normally shared photos of the bakery and silly memes, and there were like 30 messages in 5 minutes. I opened the chat confused and saw that Nathan had sent a message, but it wasn't a normal message. It was clearly something he shouldn't have sent to the family group. The message said something like, "I know, babe, I know. Claire is a selfish bitch, but we just have to hold on a little longer. Once we get the money, we can cut contact with her if you want. I don't care." And then there was a screenshot of a conversation between Rebecca and Nathan where she said things like, "Your sister is so stupid. She really thought we were going to give up. LOL, we almost have her. Your parents are completely on our side." There were more screenshots, like 5 or 6, showing months of conversations where Rebecca talked about me like I was her personal enemy, where they made plans about how to manipulate my parents, where she literally said that the money was practically theirs already, because I was going to give in eventually. Nathan realized his mistake like 2 minutes later and started sending frantic messages like, "Wait, that message wasn't for this chat? Delete that, please." But it was too late. Everyone in the group had seen it. My mom, my dad, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, everyone. My cousin Michelle responded first. Something like, "Wow, Nathan, is this really what you think of Claire?" And then others started reacting. Some with shock, others with anger. My parents didn't respond immediately, but I knew they had seen it. Everyone had seen it, and for the first time in months, it wasn't me who looked bad. Rebecca tried to do damage control, sending long messages, explaining that she was frustrated, that things had been taken out of context, that she really loved me as family. But nobody bought it, especially after Michelle shared more screenshots that Rebecca had apparently been sending to other people, bragging about how she was going to get access to the money, talking about how she had manipulated my parents to pressure me. It was like watching a mask fall off in real time. This person who had acted like the perfect daughter-in-law, like the sweet and considerate fiancée, revealing herself as someone completely different. The next 48 hours were chaotic in a completely different way from the previous months. My dad called me. His voice sounded broken, and said, "Claire, we need to talk. I'm so sorry." I went to my parents' house. My mom was crying in the kitchen, the same kitchen where I had spent so many happy afternoons of my childhood. And she hugged me, saying she had been so blind, that she should never have pressured me, that Rebecca had completely manipulated her. My dad apologized too, said that they had wanted Nathan to be happy so much that they didn't see what was really happening, that they should never have put his wedding above my well-being. Nathan came to see me. A few days later, he looked horrible, like he hadn't slept in weeks. He told me he had ended things with Rebecca, that when he confronted everything she had said in those messages, she didn't even really try to deny it. She just got angry that he had ruined the plan by sending that message to the wrong group. He asked for my forgiveness, cried, said he had been so blinded by being in love that he didn't see how she was treating me, how she had turned the whole family against me. I don't know if I forgave him in that moment. Honestly, I'm still processing everything, but I told him I needed time, that I couldn't just forget months of being treated like the family villain. The wedding obviously got canceled. Rebecca disappeared from our lives completely. She deleted all her social media or unblocked me and made them private. I don't know which. I heard through Michelle that Rebecca's family was furious with her for causing so much drama that her mom was embarrassed by how she had acted. The family members who had been pressuring me started sending me apology messages, some sincere, others that felt more like attempts to save face. Some I accepted, others I ignored, depending on how badly they had treated me during the whole process. I turned 30 about 6 months ago. I accessed the trust fund as planned, used part of the money for a down payment on a small but nice house in a quiet neighborhood, put another part in investments as I had originally planned, and donated a small amount to an organization that helps families with legal mediation, because after all this, I realized how important it is to have access to legal advice when things get difficult. I didn't give anything to Nathan, not because I'm vengeful, but because that money was mine. It was for my future, and that should never have been questionable in the first place. The relationship with my family is in the process of healing. I guess my parents are making a real effort. They're going to therapy to understand how they let things get so far. And I'm going to my own therapy to process all the emotional damage this caused. Nathan is in therapy too, trying to understand how Rebecca manipulated him so completely, how he allowed his relationship with her to destroy his relationship with me. We've had lunch a couple of times, uncomfortable but necessary conversations where we try to rebuild some of the closeness we used to have. I don't know if we'll ever be as close as before. Honestly, I think there are things you break that never fully fix. But we're trying. I established very clear boundaries with everyone after all this. I told my parents that I wouldn't tolerate more situations where they pressure me to do something with my money or my resources, that my financial life was mine and only mine. I told Nathan that I forgave him, but that I needed to see consistent actions, not just words, before I could fully trust him again. And I promised myself that I would never again let anyone make me feel guilty for defending what's mine, for putting my needs first when necessary. Last week, we all went to my parents' bakery. It was my mom's birthday, and she wanted a small family gathering. Nathan was there, my parents, Michelle, some close cousins who had remained neutral or supported me during all the drama. We ate cake, the chocolate raspberry special that my mom has made for years, and for a moment it felt almost normal, almost like before all this happened. But it also felt different, like we were all aware that we had survived something difficult together, like we had learned something important about ourselves and about how to treat each other. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand how Rebecca could manipulate my whole family so effectively, or how Nathan could be so blind to what she really was. I guess that's what love does sometimes. It makes you stupid, makes you see what you want to see instead of what's really there. And I guess I also learned something about my family, that even people who love you can be massively wrong, can get carried away by social pressures and expectations, can choose the wrong path even when they're trying to do the right thing. What was hardest for me to accept was that for months, they made me feel like I was a bad person for wanting to keep something that was legitimately mine, like defending my boundaries was equivalent to being selfish. And the truth is, it still affects me. I still have moments where I doubt my decisions, where I wonder if I should have given in a little just to keep the peace. But then I remember those messages from Rebecca, the way she talked about me, the plans she had, and I realized that giving in wouldn't have brought peace. It would have only taught everyone that they could pressure me until I broke. My grandfather left me that money because he trusted me, because he wanted to make sure I had a solid foundation for my future. He didn't leave it for me to finance my brother's wedding, or to buy family peace, or to prove I was a good sister. He left it for me, with specific conditions, because that's what he wanted. And honoring his wish doesn't make me a bad person. It makes me someone who respects the will of people who loved me. So here I am, 28 years old now, living in my own house, working on my career, rebuilding family relationships on my own terms. It's not perfect. It probably will never be like it was before, but it's okay. I've learned that family is important, but that you're also important. That loving someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself until you disappear. That it's okay to say no even when everyone wants you to say yes. And I've learned, above all, that people who truly love you will find a way to respect you even when they're disappointed. That real love doesn't come with impossible conditions or demands for unfair sacrifices. Nathan sent me a message yesterday asking if I wanted to go for a walk this weekend. Just the two of us. No pressure. I said yes. I don't know how it's going to go. It's probably going to be awkward. We're probably going to have to talk about difficult things. But it's a step. And that's all I can do now. Take small steps forward. Keep my boundaries firm, but my heart open to the possibility of healing. Because at the end of the day, I'm still his sister. And he's still my brother. And maybe that's enough to start over. Even if it's from a different place than where we used to be.